Yeah, my name is Patrick Rauland. I work for WooThemes, and I am the product manager for WooCommerce. So what that means is I kind of plan the roadmap of where WooCommerce is going. So I talk to customers, I figure out what they need, I write specs, I talk to the developers, I get all that sorted so that the developers can just build it without having any questions. Before that, I was on the dev team, and before that, I did support for WooThemes. Part of my job is also working with third parties, and because we allow other people, if they have a good idea, we'll listen to it and we'll let them sell it on our site. So a lot of people submit code to us, and the vast majority of it is stuff we don't use, and that's because it's one of two things. One, they're not WordPress developers, like they come from some other ecosystem where they code it this way and they don't use hooks the right way. You can tell when you look at their code that they only built a WordPress plugin because they thought they could make money on it or something.
Right.
But I mean, for a big plugin like WooCommerce, when you write code, it has to be in such a way that it doesn't break anything else. So you need to be very specific. Make sure that you're always checking to make that functions exist, that classes exist, that this variable is already set, that type of stuff. All right. Can you guys see? You should see a WooCommerce site.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to show you my favorite, I guess my favorite plugin that I built for WooCommerce. And if you are not familiar with it, basically WooCommerce is an e-commerce plugin you add to your site. You can have products and orders and pay with credit cards, all that stuff. So I'm just going to show you what this plugin does first. So I'm going in the cart page. I'm going to go to the checkout. Here's all this stuff. And I forgot to set something up. Let me set something up quickly. So in the back end, what my little plugin does is you can have a terms and conditions page in WooCommerce, and all it does is open it in a pop-up. And it just uses all the stuff built into WordPress to do that. So I'm just going to set a terms and conditions page, which I forgot to do before this. And now if I go back to the checkout, you'll see. So a lot of the stuff I've been doing is the stuff I've been doing in my free time outside of my sort of 9 to 5 is coming up with ways to improve conversions. And when you click on this terms and conditions link, it opens a new window. And there have been some advocates that say whenever you open a new window, you're taking people out of the checkout, and that'll lower conversion rates. So I just built a little plugin. I'm going to go back and activate it. Terms and conditions pop up. I'll refresh this page. And the only thing it does is open this in a pop-up. So you can see the whole page right here. And there's only one setting for the whole plugin that adds this little agree button at the bottom if you like it. And then, of course, you can check out. So that's all it does, but it does something. I guess the reason I like it is because it does one thing and it does it very well.
Right.
So if you were a developer and your client asked you to improve conversion rates, and if you're selling thousands of dollars of stuff every month, buying a $30 plugin, this could actually easily save you the $30 every month by having one person not leave the checkout.
Right. That's really cool. I noticed that you've got AdBlock running, which I use and love, and it didn't. Do you have? This thing wouldn't sort of run afoul of AdBlock or any sort of pop-up blocker or something. Is that correct?
So it shouldn't. So okay, let's get rid of that.
If I'm not mistaken, it's not actually popping up a new window. It's
just like a little JavaScript model
page.
Yeah.
Correct. So I am running AdBlock, but this is what is it called? Pretty Box? No, it's not Pretty Box. This is the Lightbox script built into WordPress. And I'm totally forgetting the name of it right now, but there is a Lightbox script, Thickbox, right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say Fatbox, so.
Pretty close. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a new window, so it shouldn't be affected by anything like AdBlock.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so got it. So it basically increases conversions because the checkout flow all happens sort of on the checkout. You're not reading a terms and conditions page and navigating all over the place. So
Right.
really cool. Okay.
So would you like to take a look at the code, or?
Definitely.
All right. So I think I'm foolishly sharing my browser, so I need to stop sharing that and then share my whole screen. All right. So screen share my whole screen. And it looks like that's working. So it's a pretty small plugin. So I guess let me just start with like sort of the overview here.
Yeah.
So Git is obviously just my version control, and my text editor is showing it for some reason. So that's nothing. This Woo includes. This is something that we include on all the plugins that we sell on our site. So it's just stuff like it helps you. It prompts people to download our Woo Themes helper, which will update the plugins automatically since they're premium and not hosted on WordPress.org. So it's that type of stuff. So the Git and the Woo includes are just sort of part of having a plugin. They don't really include anything. This is the main file here. So this WooCommerce terms and conditions pop up. As you can see, I've only had one little bug so far because I'm on 1.0.1. So let's go through this. So this up here is once again all for our sort of updater. So if you're selling premium plugins, you need to add some code somewhere so that the premium plugins know which site to look for and what keys to use to see if there's an update. So this is something that Woo Themes gave me, and I just put it in. Moving down a little bit, we almost always do stuff like this. If a class doesn't exist, then create a new class. And as I said before, if you're just writing your own code for a freelance client, you probably don't need to do this. But you never know what other names, what other classes a programmer has called. So it's always a good idea to do something like this. It's 2 extra lines, a line at the top and a line at the bottom to close the if.
Yeah.
We do some extra stuff here. I'll show you. So there's this instance, which is a static variable, and I'll scroll down, and there's this get instance function. Mm-hmm. What this does is just make sure that you are only running it once. So we're preventing a user from accidentally running it twice. So if they called it the wrong way, if they tried to create a new instance of it, they'll get the old one. We're basically this extra function here in that instance variable make sure that people can't mess it up, because there really only should be one of this working. There's no reason to have 2 of these working.
It's a singleton pattern.
Mm-hmm. So going back up again. So as I said before, once you get into the constructor, does everyone know what a constructor is? I assume your audience does.
Yeah. Why don't you explain broadly what it is, though?
Sure.
Yeah.
So if I go back down here, this is the very first thing that WordPress actually does. So WordPress will read all of this code up here, and then once it gets down to the bottom, this is the first line that's not in this class, and so it'll run it on. Once all the plugins are loaded, then get an instance of this class, and we're calling this method here. Sorry, I sound a little bit sick. Which is getting. If nothing exists, then call a new instance of yourself. So it's saying, if no one has called this class before, create a new one, and then return it. So that loads the whole class. And when it does that, PHP will automatically load a constructor method. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you call a new class, PHP will load a constructor, if it exists.
And can you talk a little bit about the self variable, because that might look like magic.
It is magic. This is just calling. So normally when you're writing, let me just write it. I think it's a little bit easier to explain. If I'm writing regular PHP variables, I can say something like this, and my variable is equal to 5. It's a little bit different though when you're calling static variables, and that's when you'll use the self : variable name. It's similar, except that with static things there isn't. When you're calling something statically, it's different than calling a variable that's included in the class.
Right, because, if I can jump in, because static means that only one exists, you use self-reference instead of this in PHP, because this refers to the current instance of a class, but because static classes only exist once in your entire system, which is why we're using the singleton to enforce that, your instance variable is the only one that exists in the entire system. So you access it differently to clarify for you and future users that it's not the instance in question, which is what this would refer to, but rather it's the entire only one of them that exists, kind of. And that's still a little fuzzy, but...
No, that was about 100 times better than I explained it. That was good.
Thank you, guys.
Is there any other magic in here that we need to explain?
Well, we were on the constructor. So, no, that looks great. Okay, so as we said, basically defining a class, saying these are all the properties and methods of the class. Then the first thing that get executed is the add action at the bottom. So I think people will understand that. And now we're to the point of calling the construct.
Sure. So, as I said before in the beginning, we're very careful to load things only when it's appropriate. So if someone doesn't have WooCommerce installed, it won't get past. It won't, and some people don't. It won't get past this. It won't get past this check right here. And then I go even further to make sure there's this, is checkout, which is something I use later down the line. I just want to make sure that that's there. It should be there, but I don't know if someone's running a really old version or if we change the version down the road and whatever. Since I'm calling it here, and this is kind of the crux of the whole plugin, I just put it up here just to make sure. So worst case scenario, if WooCommerce changes is checkout to is whatever to something else to is checkout 2, I don't know why they do that. But if that ever happened, this plugin would just not work, but it wouldn't explode your site, and that is far better.
And some idiot could hack WooCommerce itself, could just be rewriting like actual WooCommerce files. So,
it happens.
I guess you could see that person from themselves as well, right?
Yep. So we do a lot of that just to make sure that people don't break stuff. Yep.
Right. Cool. Gotcha. So those are the checks.
So then now we're getting into the actual stuff here. Where once WooCommerce is loaded and there's this checkout function, we say load all the JavaScript stuff we need. And basically I do almost everything through this one method and the JavaScript. So this WP-Enqueue scripts runs when WordPress wants to add JavaScript to a page. So any plugin can say include WP-Enqueue scripts, this method, and then do all this stuff here. So this is what happens when WordPress wants to load the scripts. I do all this stuff, and then I actually load the script.
Yeah.
So I'm just making sure this only should run on the checkout page. There's no point in popping up a terms and conditions page on the cart, or obviously.
Right.
So I'm doing some more checking here. I'm getting the terms and conditions page. This is something that we set. This is like a useful WooCommerce function that we have that just gets the page ID. So if you guys remember, if I set the terms and conditions page on the settings, if they have that set, it'll be saved into that variable. This is the one option I have. Let me just take a very quick. Let me go escape to the admin very quickly because I think it'll help if I just show you guys those settings and options.
Yeah.
So if I go back here. So under the checkout settings, that is where you set your terms and conditions page. If they don't have anything set like that, and they save this page, then there won't be anything here, and we won't get past this condition later down the road. This option right here is WooCommerce, terms and conditions pop-up agree button is this little thing right here, which some people said that they wanted an agree button at the bottom. All it does is close the pop-up and check the box by default. It check the terms and conditions box. It's not that big of a thing, but some people wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it has the nice effect that you have the pop-up and it has you do an action and it does perform something lower down.
Okay, so we get the this page and this option. We make sure that we have the terms and conditions page. Can you see my Slack notifications? I should turn off Slack next time. So I'm calling another method here, which is loading the content. Let's jump down to that, because I think that I like breaking stuff. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I love one of the rules that I remember back in college was like trying to make methods that are like 30 to 40 lines long. So this is 71 to 98. And so as soon as I can break stuff into many small little pieces, I always do. So I could have written this whole, what is this? This is like 20 lines. I could have just dropped this in here, but I just like breaking things up into logical chunks.
Right.
So I need to get the so what I'm doing here is I'm getting all of the post content, basically what's on that terms and conditions page. I'm going to grab it and then I'm going to put it in a special div for later, which the pop-up will then open. Although it's a little bit weird, you have to grab the content and the title separately, which is kind of a pain. So I get the content. I'm saving the title from the content. And then I'm loading that agree button. And then this handy little function here is WooCommerce get template. This is something built into WooCommerce, which is it looks a little bit confusing, and I probably could have spaced this better. I probably could make it look something, I don't know, like this if I wanted, which makes it a little bit easier to read, but I was too lazy, I guess, when I was writing it. But this get template will actually load a PHP file and then drop stuff into it. So I will show you what that looks like. It's right here under my plugin templates pop-up, and it's pretty easy. I mean, you can just see I put it in a special div and in the side. I don't remember what the ID is off the top of my head. I think the JavaScript needs this later.
Okay.
I hide it, and then I format the content a little bit, and I add the button if there's a button. So if you wanted to put that agree button on top of the content, or if you wanted to have two agree buttons, then you could do something like this. But the way this function works, this WooCommerce get template, is you can automatically override it by putting it in your theme. So if I'm using 2012, I can create a new folder called 2012 WooCommerce terms and conditions pop-up / pop-up.php, and that file will override this one. So whenever you update this plugin, it doesn't override your version in your theme, which is awesome.
Right. It's a bit like the native get template part that WordPress has only specific to WooCommerce.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the content. So once we've loaded all this and put it in a hidden aside, then we need to load these scripts. So there's this WP and Q script function that you can use whenever you want to load a JavaScript file. And in this case, I'm loading something called WC terms and conditions pop-up. And normally I don't really do this, but you should load. I need to load Thickbox. So if I didn't put this here, then WordPress wouldn't load Thickbox.
Right. And so that array is JavaScript dependencies, meaning that JavaScript files that need to be in place for this JavaScript to load.
Correct.
Can you talk about the plugins URL function? Because I think that writing paths and URLs can really be a source of confusion.
Yeah. So plugins URL is to be totally honest, I always have to look these up because I always forget exactly where they start. but it's a useful function to get your plugin URL. Oh gosh, it's a useful way to load files. So you don't have to say, like, if you were to load this file with straight PHP, you'd have to say something god awful, like, you know, all the way back to WordPress, WP content, plugins, WooCommerce terms and conditions pop up. I'm kind of stripping out all that very basic stuff and just saying, hey, starting at this plugin, load this file. And I think it's this here that says start with this file.
Mm-hmm.
If this current file that I'm editing was not at the root, this would change. I'd have to use a constant or something to start at the root.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's a really nice way to write this. This way, if people rewrite your plugins directory, which happens, like they'll change plugins to something else, this will still work, which is really cool.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, I'll give you one of each. So my favorite WordPress function is if you've ever had to do your own settings page, which is the worst, right? There are some really nice WordPress functions like checked and selected that just make writing those pages easier. So when you're writing a settings page without those functions, you'd have to say, if this option from the database is equal to 1, then echo, you know, single colon or single quotation mark checked equals double quotation checked double single. Ugh.
Oh, God.
You know, it's just a pain. Whereas you can much easier say this WordPress function called checked variable name 1, and I think that's it. And it just simplifies writing settings pages, and it removes a lot of dumb code.
Gotcha.
So it's nice. I do actually. I have a really lame favorite WooCommerce function. It's this thing that like automatically gets your weight units and converts it, and it's just a function that like will convert your weight units from anything to anything, and it just works really nicely. Like you look at it and you go, I think I passed this in and I get this out. Oh, it worked. I thought I would have had to spend a half hour on that. No, it just worked. So I would say, first of all, every single time I go to a WordCamp, I get super pumped up about everything. So if there's a WordCamp near you, like within an hour or two driving, go to it. You will meet other people that are in your exact same shoes. They're a plugin developer, a theme developer, a business owner, someone just trying to use WordPress, whatever. I get so much out of every WordCamp I go to. For me, that face-to-face time is way better than anything else. I'm also a big fan of podcasts because I walk my dog, and then like I'll take like a half-hour walk at night and just listen to stuff. So Apply Filters is great with Pippin Williamson and Brad Tunard. They talk about WordPress development stuff. There's WP Cast, and they do good stuff. Getting out of the WordPress space though, there are like Side Hustle Nation. Like if you want to like think about side businesses and how to sell WordPress plugins. They talk about selling ebooks, and it's just, I don't know, that type of stuff pumps me up. I think a WordPress, it kind of goes back to business. Like, you need to know what your client, so Brennan Dunn, good example. If you guys haven't read his book, Double Your Freelancing Rates, read it, it's awesome. But Brennan Dunn always asks his clients why they want something, and then you'll prevent yourself from writing software they think they want, but they don't really want. So if your client says, we need to automatically, I don't know, capture newsletter subscribers even if they don't opt in or something, ask them why. Like, oh, well, we really want more subscribers. Okay, well, let's try this, this, and this before I do this thing. Right. Before you write any code, you need to understand why you need to write it.
Yeah. The best code is the code you never had to write.
I like it.
That's cool.
I think it's all about understanding, and that's my job, is like understanding what people really want and not what they say they want.
Yeah.
So we dedicate a whole position to that at WooThemes. Like, it's important to know what you have to write. But I mean, just from a technical perspective, I mean, keep your code dry. Don't repeat yourself. So if you have to repeat yourself in multiple places, you're at some point going to forget it, and problems will happen. God, you got to use version control. I just came across a WordPress plugin company the other day that doesn't use version control, and my head exploded. I don't know how they don't use it. Good question. So first of all, you guys saw my Slack messages popping up. That's awesome. So Slack is great for Teams, right? Or HipChat. They're both really great. As it's just 1,000 times better than email, because you have a log of all the messages you send back and forth, and you can send GIFs to each other, which is important. So Slack is really good. GitHub for version control. I tried Bitbucket. Even though it's free for like unlimited repos and small teams, I don't think it's worth it because the UI isn't as good. I use Atom as my code editor, which is a free tool from GitHub. It has packages. It's pretty similar to Sublime Text, but it's by GitHub, and I thought it was fancy, so I gave it a try. I like MAMP just because it's simple. I mean, I know a lot of people are getting very excited about, Vagrant and that type of stuff, but I'm fine with MAMP for now. And honestly, since I'm not coding every day, I don't need something more heavy duty. Let's see. So there's a couple other utility apps that are just good if you're using a Mac. Alfred is good because it allows you to just open up apps right away. So I just have Command spacebar set to Alfred, and I'll type in Command spacebar SL, and then press enter, and that opens Slack. So in a second, you can open up any app you want. Another favorite app is Divi, D-I-V-I, I believe, and that's just, so for me, it's just Command Shift spacebar, and then I have these different presets which allow me to so Command Shift 1, or Command Shift spacebar 1 opens everything in full screen. So, and then I have 2 and 3, which left half, right half, and then I have 4, which is left 2/3, and 5, which is right 1/3. It's just a really easy way to flick things around if you have multiple windows. Plugin development sounds crazy, but I mean, plugin development is almost identical to theme development. I mean, because once you get into the WordPress actions and hook systems, it's not that scary. So I mean, I would start by learning how to really customize a WordPress theme. That's how I got started. I only did stuff just because the client wanted it to look this way, so you have to move things around with the WordPress hook system.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a great place to get started. And then you can get into actually, creating a plugin, but you just take your code in the theme and put it in a plugin. It's kind of the same thing. I do totally have a shout out for me. So, one, WooCommerce 2.3 is coming out a couple weeks from now, and 2, which is exciting because we just did a bunch of UI fixes, which is so nice. The cart page you guys saw, that's the new one, and the old one had some issues with it. So we tried to again improve conversion rates. 2 is I'm writing a WooCommerce book, and it should be out in the next couple months, and it's going to be in paper. I'm excited, in addition to being digital.
So you're physically self-publishing?
No. So I was going to. Do you guys know Nathan Barry?
Yeah.
He has an awesome book called Authority, and I read it, and I was like, I'm going to write a book. I was really excited. And then I realized it was a lot of work. And then at the exact same time that happened, a publisher reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to write a WooCommerce book? I'm like, yes. I will take what I have started on and turn it into a book for you. And they're handling most of the marketing.
That's awesome. What's the name of the publisher?
So the book is WooCommerce Cookbook, and the publisher, it's by Pact Publishing. It's actually up on their site, so you can search it on their site right now, and it's up for pre-sale.
Well, thank you so much, and the plugin was fantastic, and really great advice for developers. Really good to talk to you.
Awesome, good to hear. Thanks for having me.